Everyone, and thank you for tuning in today. You are currently watching the Skill Building Sunday Drawing Group here on Reinventing the Tattoo. This is a live stream started on April 24th at 1 p.m. And if this is working for you, please let us know in the comments and the chat. While we are streaming out to different places, I'm going to let you know a little bit about what you are watching. So basically, this is a session dedicated to helping you build your skills, different skills and different mediums. And, it's here to help you improve. This is Guy Aitchison's Reinventing the Tattoo community, where tattooers, apprentices, collectors, and the curious are encouraged to join in these live streams, real world events to share and inspire and ultimately create better art and tattoos together. We beam out nearly every day, and with your help have evolved into a quality network of programming of amazing live and on-demand tattoo and art shows, and they've all been receiving rave reviews. You can find us both on both app stores, the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. Or you might be beaming in from YouTube or Facebook, or maybe you're catching the replays on the Roku channel, reinventingthetattoo.com/Roku. Or maybe you're listening on Spotify or Apple or any number of other places. Artists, feel free to zoom in by clicking on the link in the events area. If it's your first time zooming into Reinventing, you could win a limited run t-shirt. But you can always get the latest event schedule, notifications, etc. at reinventing247.com or reinventingthetattoo.com. We always recommend that you reach out to friends and colleagues and other people that have an interest in tattoos. Let them know about these shows so that we can really try to keep this going. We do have some weekly staple shows that we always encourage everyone to tune into, such as starting on Sundays with me, Jason Leeser, here at the Skill Building Sunday Drawing Group. And that's directly followed on Mondays at 11 a.m. with the Tattoo Weekly, hosted by Lauren Gregory, Jake Meeks, and Gabe Ripley. Mondays at 9 p.m., we have a subscriber exclusive drawing group with Guy Aitchison himself, where we slowly cover different chapters and different aspects of each chapter in the Reinventing the Tattoo canon. Tuesdays at 10 a.m., we have the Tuesday Feels drawing group with Ricardo Sertivant, a very good friend of mine, an incredibly talented artist. Wednesdays at noon, we have the Tattoo Now show with Gabe Ripley, where we discuss different types of business aspects of tattooing. And Thursdays at 6, we have the Tattoo Collecting podcast with Fawn Baker and Jordan Ruckus. I'd like to go through and mention a couple of real world events that we have coming up. May 20th through 22nd, Reinventing the Tattoo will be in Hell City, Columbus, Ohio, and you can find the listing for that at hellcity.com. June 3rd, 4th, and 5th, I will be up at the Deadly Tattoo Convention in Calgary, Canada. Feel free to take a look and see some of the live streams I'm doing while I'm there. June 10th through 12th, there's going to be the Ink Mania Tattoo Convention with Phil Holt and Stefano in person. Guy will be beaming in. Frank Linatra will be there, and there will be other amazing seminars. July 29th through 31st, we have the Rubber City Tattoo Invitational in Akron, Ohio with Tony Urbanek. In August, Reinventing the Tattoo will be at Hell City, Phoenix, Arizona. And October 21st through 23rd, we will also be at the Richmond Tattoo Convention in Richmond, Virginia. I would like to go through and thank some of our sponsors real quick. Raw Pigments, an ink company that's tapping into the source, rawpigments.co. I've started to incorporate a lot of them into my own personal lineup and can honestly say with ease, they are absolutely fantastic. I love them. I highly recommend them for everything. Let's see, who else do we have? We have worldtattooevents.com, the largest, most comprehensive resource for tattoo events worldwide. There's lots of upcoming conventions and a lot of things are getting rescheduled constantly. And the best way to keep up to date with all of that is by going to worldtattooevents.com. D-Lies Pro, also known as Dermalize in the rest of the world, protect your art. If you're still using saran wrap to wrap your tattoos after they're done, maybe it's time to step your game up. Feel free to take a look on YouTube. All you have to do is search for D-Lies Pro, and you can find out some more about it. Designed by wound care specialists, it is the go-to aftercare around the world. You also have Tattoo Now, technology for tattooers, the leading edge in SEO and professional development for tattooers of all levels, and they're now accepting new clients. So go to tattoonow.com to really extend your reach and start attracting those clients that you really want to tattoo. And of course, this wouldn't be Reinventing the Tattoo without Guy Aitchison at guyaitchison.com, the founder and inspiration behind Reinventing the Tattoo. At guyaitchison.com, you can find copies of his Biomech Encyclopedia, his DVDs, some custom coil machines. If you're a collector like I am, you love collecting nostalgic tattoo machines, take a look. He only has a few left, but they are going quickly, so you might want to jump on that. He also has some original oil paintings for sale, some prints, and countless other things as well. So thank you, Guy, for everything that you have done for me personally and for the tattoo community at large. As always, please feel free to go through and hit those like and subscribe buttons, especially if you're watching YouTube. Help us get out the word. Post some positive reviews on the channel, reach out to friends and colleagues, maybe stream us live at your studio. You never know. If you would like to host a Reinventing the Tattoo event or sponsor the community or critiques, please email management@reinventingthetattoo.com. And welcome to the show. So today I'm going to be going through, I'm not sure how many people are actually watching right now. I'm going to be going through and working on an oval type painting that I started at the studio this past week. Had a little bit of downtime, so I thought I would work on it a tiny bit. And I've got 2 matching frames, so I'm hoping this one will fit inside one of them. It should. I hope so. I hope I measured it out correctly. But I'm going to be going through and working on this today. And I will switch over to that in just a second. I've always found it useful to start working in different mediums, especially if you find yourself working in a medium quite frequently. I've always found it helpful to go through and just kind of switch it up every now and then, especially if there's something that you really, really want to work on or really try to improve. Maybe you should start working in a medium that's going to be beneficial to helping you improve in that aspect. Lately, I've been revisiting line work and trying to get my line work up and, even better than it currently is. And one of the ways that I've always found to do that is by working with ink and a brush on paper. So I'm going to be going through and working on that today. We should have a few other people joining us later today. So hopefully they pop in. Otherwise, you're stuck listening to me the entire time. And I'll give you guys a quick look at what I have going on today. So this is the painting I will be working on. It's kind of difficult to get everything situated right, especially with like all the AV gear, but yeah, so this is what I've got going on for today. And I know you can't really see it all that well. I'm going to try to focus it a little bit better. But this is one of the secrets. And if you talk to any of the old timers out there, they'll tell you the same thing. One of the secrets and one of the reasons why people used to work in watercolor on paper or ink on paper quite often is because there's a direct translation and direct correlation to the tattoo process. Taking your liner brush, dipping it into the pigment reservoirs, and then laying that brush down in a specific way. is going to give you a very, very similar kind of feel and look to actually working with, tattoo pigment on skin. I've got a number of different brushes I'm going to be using today. So let's see, what am I going to be using? Love my brush organization here. By the way, these Jerry Q brushes, I picked them up off of Amazon. They were super cheap. Absolutely awesome. Highly recommend them. They were way better than I thought. So I've been using a lot of those and a couple of other ones lately as well. Art Fooey makes a decent brush. They're okay. Let's see. Need this guy. A couple of other little guys. Let's see. This guy, number 2 liner, number 0 liner. And I'll break out some of the other smaller liners later. But yeah, I always encourage people to work in different mediums, no matter what type and style of work that they do, whether it's acrylic, whether it's, watercolor, whether it's oil painting. Thank you. There's always something to be worked on. There's always something to improve upon. And the only way that you can do that is by putting in the time, the effort, and the energy. So I always try to encourage people, pull something out that maybe you're not super comfortable with working with, pull it out, just start playing around with it and just see what happens. Today for black ink, I'm going to be using Dr. Martin's Ocean fountain pen ink. It's waterproof, it's archival, it's fade resistant. Highly recommend it for like any of you out there that like to do ink wash or anything like that. It's really, really awesome. Also, if you notice, there's not really a whole lot of like hard black areas in this heart, and there's a reason why. There's a little bit of like black shading in there, like very light black shading, but there's not too much as far as, I want to use these. As far as like hard black shading. Part of the reason why is because this piece is going to be very line work heavy. And whenever you're dealing with something that's very line work heavy, and you really want that line work to really become prominent and stand out, I generally tend to find that, the more you want people to focus on the line work, the less hard black shading you really want to put into the painting. Not necessarily always true for tattoos, but definitely if you're working on something like this. So I'm going to go through just plain old brush. I do have a cup of water over here, which I'll probably dip into real quick. And I've got some of my favorite blue shop towels out and about. And looks like we might have a comment. Yeah, Gerardo. What's going on, Gerardo? Hope you're doing well today. He's tuning in on the YouTube channel, which is awesome. So I just dipped my brush into a tiny bit of water just to facilitate a little bit of the wicking process for the black ink. You don't want too much on there. I know it's kind of hard to see what I'm doing, so let me try to move this down here a little bit better. So I always like to run my brush right along the lip of the cup. And let's see if I can get a little bit better light in here. That should help a little bit better. Don't know if that's going to be better or not. Yep. Gerardo, yes, you should be able to find the link in the RIT calendar. I can always hop on Instagram real quick and send you a direct message, though, if you want me to. In fact, I'll do that anyway. Let's see. Let's let's do this. Go next. And copy. There you go. Yeah, Gerardo, if you're still hanging out and watching, check your Instagram DMs and you'll see a direct link to the session today. So as I was saying before, what I'm going to do is, and I know I've got it in a black cap, but it's black ink and just works better. So I'm going to dip straight in here, get a nice bit of black pigment on the tip of the brush, and then just kind of like rub it right against the tip to get some of the excess off of it. Of course, I forgot to charge my headphones, so I'm going to have to go through and plug in real quick before I get started painting so that way I don't lose audio, because I have had a very, very busy week. So give me 1 second, folks. I'm just going to plug these guys in. And let's see if I can do this without losing audio. There we go. All right. So I'm in here. Hopefully this microphone and headset works pretty well. It's analog, so it should be okay. Hopefully I don't mess this up too bad. But yeah, so I've always found that there's a direct correlation, as I was mentioning before, between tattooing and working with pen and ink, or, brush and ink specifically, because you're going to use some of the same hand motions that you would if you were working with tattoos. So I'm going to start down here. And if you'll notice, I'm going to hold my brush with, 3 fingers, very light, but I'm just going to be working right off the tip of the brush. I'm just going to slowly lay it down, and you'll see a little bit of flex in the bristles, and that's totally fine. Because as I come to the end of the line, I'm going to lift up slightly. I find that this motion and this technique works really well if you're working right off the tips of the pins, pulling a line when you're doing a tattoo. So it's really, really good practice. You'll have a lot of old school guys that'll sit down and they'll be like, nah, just lay it in there. Don't worry about, tapering it or anything like that. And it's like, yeah, not so much anymore. I like to taper every line I possibly can, just because I find it gives it a little bit more of a dynamic visual appeal. So that's done. Ink. And I may go back through at some point in time and actually fill this white part in. For now, I'm just going to leave like a nice perimeter line just for today's demo purposes. A lot of people like to work in oils. I like to work in oils. I like to work in every medium I can get my hands on, because I find that there's something that relates to tattooing with every single medium out there. Even if it's a foreign concept, you can always find a parallel if you're looking for one. You know, like working with graphic marker. Well, you run your machines in the right way and it's going to work just like a marker. You know, that's one thing that I was always raised to believe, was that a tattoo machine should be like using a Sharpie. You know, it doesn't matter if it's a liner or a shader, it should act almost exactly like you're using a Sharpie. So I always try to keep that in mind. And we've got Gerardo joining us. Awesome. Cool. And I believe he's connecting to the audio. Hey, Gerardo.
Hello, Jason. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing all right, man. How are you?
I'm doing fine too, man. Thanks.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah.
Let me share my camera. I'm working
Cool.
on this on the tree, man.
Right on, man. That's pretty cool.
Well, it's coming out. It's coming out okay, I think. I have like 4 hours working on it, man.
Yeah. Yeah, but that looks really awesome, man. Just working on the texture and the structure of it.
Yep, that's right. Working on the first layer of the plasticine, and later I'll try on all the textures, and apparently we have to do the drawing also, a drawing of it with the raven and the moon.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, let's see how that goes.
Hey, man, I'm all about it.
Yeah.
You know, I've always been one where if I can take my own photos and build my own models of things that, you know, I need to draw out for whatever project, or like maybe I'm working on an American flag or any kind of a flag or folding fabric, I'll try to go through and I'll find a piece of fabric that I can drape over something or get it to fold in the way I want. And then go through and I'll take some photos, you know, maybe do a little bit of manipulation here and there in Procreate or in Photoshop, but I'm really going to be looking at the structure and the way that the light hits it.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Got you, man. It looks really natural, right? Totally
Absolutely.
different from getting a reference, finding a reference on the internet or something.
Absolutely. And I mean, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of great reference photos out there on the internet. But sometimes you're looking for a very specific kind of look. And the only way that you're going to come across that is by taking your own pictures. You know, so I've always been an advocate of that, if at all possible. You know, sometimes you're not going to have that. Like, say someone comes in and wants a statue of David, right? Well, I don't exactly have the opportunity to fly out to Florence, Italy and take my own photos and then fly back. You know, I don't exactly have that opportunity all the time. So sometimes you have to work off of a reference, you know, and other found pictures that, you know, you come across on the interweb. But, you know, if at all possible, take your own pictures, man. That's what's going to make your work unique.
Yep, that's right. That's right. So this is the first time I'm trying this. So let's see how it goes, man.
Absolutely.
It's been fun, you know. It's been really fun, man. Yeah.
Well, dude, it's you know, that's part of being an artist, man, is just getting out there and like having fun with it. You know, it's something that I hear a lot from a lot of different artists. is after a while, they just become jaded, and, doing tattoos or being an artist in general doesn't become fun anymore because they're so surrounded by doing it to make money. But if you just
Yeah, that's
step
right.
back and enjoy the process, man, it's the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah, I've had times where after some years of working tattooing, I felt it like work. I don't know if you understand what I mean. I felt it like work.
Yep.
So I know something's going wrong there, something's not working, man. I got to work on myself a little bit more to start enjoying it again, So that's why I'm here also.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes you just got to fall back and, take a look at everything that's going on around you, because in this industry, this should not feel like work. So if it does feel like work, something's not right.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think that's the perfect analogy, the perfect way to think about it.
Yeah, it's we gotta enjoy the whole process, the drawing, the designing, talking with the clients, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. So
Well, I
I
think
like what
that's
you're doing
something.
there, man.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Every now and then I like to work with like watercolors or liquid acrylic on paper. I've just found it to be very akin to working with a tattoo, from the
Yeah,
way that you can layer it and how transparent the colors are, and how that works with like skin tone. And, if you go through and you're using a liner brush, how that works like you're using an actual liner.
yeah, it's very similar. Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, I saw your work, on Instagram. I went the other day looking at all your work. You have really, really nice ones, man.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I, I've been doing this for a little while, not as long as some other people, but I've been fortunate enough to get some really good advice. So, from a couple of really awesome tattooers. And, that coupled with just taking the time to sit back and absorb what other people are saying and the advice that they're giving, really taking it to heart, and then trying to understand, like, where's that advice coming from? What is it founded in? Where did they come across that piece of advice? How is that going to potentially benefit me? And what are my goals? And how is that going to benefit my goals? Right. So I do a lot of like self-reflection, a lot of, asking, okay, how is this going to impact my future? How is this going to benefit me? I
Yeah,
do
yeah,
that
nice.
at least once a week. And every time I get a little bit, another little morsel of information from someone, it's like, okay, let me take that and I'm going to sit on it and mull it over in my head, and I'm
Hmm.
going to examine it, and I'm going to turn around and, see how that, really plays into what are my future goals?
Nice, man.
What
Nice
do I
practice.
eventually want to achieve? And like, I've always been that guy that's like, all I want to do is bodysuits. That's all I ever want to do, is just like, give me every huge tattoo you can imagine. That's all I want to do all the time, you know? And I was talking to a friend of mine not too long ago about like, all of this other stuff. And I asked him to critique some of my work. And he's like, dude, you got a lot of big stuff. And I was like, yeah, it's what I really love to do. And he's like,
Mhm.
don't forget, man, it's those small tattoos that allow you to do those big tattoos, you know? So if you're really
Yeah,
trying to step your game up and improve your work, start small. Look at everything that you're doing small and make sure that you're doing it perfectly flawless every single time. Then take the next size up, and then do that
that's
perfectly flawless every single time. And then take the
that's
next size up. You know, he's like, think about it like stepping stones. You can jump right into doing full body suits all you want, but number one, most people out there don't want full body suits.
hmm
And I was like, whoa, okay. And if that's your first bullet point, what other kind of knowledge are you going to drop on me? It was really enlightening to sit back and, get that kind of a critique from him.
That's really good advice, man. Yeah, yeah. Have you noticed, like, if you go to a seminar, you get all this information that maybe at the moment you don't understand, but in another day you're doing a tattoo and something just pops up. That's right. That's what he's talking about.
Oh yeah, dude. Absolutely. And that's why I love going to seminars, taking, attending conventions, not even working at them, just going to them and just
Yeah.
walking around and talking to other artists,
Yep.
and picking their brains and just seeing what they have to think about different stuff. You never know what kind of knowledge you're going to gain and then how that's going to benefit you later on. Because as you mentioned, sometimes things just click. Sometimes things pop into your head and you can apply it right then and right there.
That's right.
I'm also a huge fan of constantly learning, but sometimes learning is done best when you do your own investigations into things instead of reaching out to other people saying, oh, well, what's your trick for doing this? And it's like, sometimes you have to do your own homework. You have to do your own investigations. If you really want to learn it, put the effort into learning it.
Yeah. You gotta make your mistakes.
Absolutely. And I mean, I'm not saying that everyone needs to learn through experience by making mistakes. Sometimes that's not the best way to go about it. But sometimes that's the way that people learn the best.
Yeah.
We try to minimize that as much as possible in the tattoo world because, what we're doing is permanent. It doesn't go anywhere, right? The last thing you want to do is make a mistake on a client.
That's right.
But sometimes, especially for younger tattooers out there that don't want to go through and get an apprenticeship or don't want to take the time to learn art, all they want to do is like, they just want to start tattooing. And it's like, that's cool. But like, go through the process, go through the steps and don't make mistakes.
Yeah. It's really great to have someone like Guy showing us all the way. He's been there for years and done all the mistakes and all the good things. So it's great to have that advice.
Absolutely.
Of course, we have to do the mistakes on our own, but it's nice to have someone guiding us.
Oh, absolutely. And I've been looking up to Guy's work since, oh Lord, probably high school. So early 2000s.
Wow.
Like,
yeah.
it's been a bit, man. It's been an absolute, journey, just listening to what he has to say, picking up. I won't ever forget the first time I got a copy of Reinventing the Tattoo. I was ecstatic. And I didn't do anything for like the next 3 weeks except for read it, highlight passages, things that were potentially helpful with painting and art. Cause I was in high school and I wanted to know, okay, how does this guy do this? Right. And, just looking at everything as far as like texture, contrast, layout and design and stuff like that. Like, it's having that and going back through and learning all of that. It was like my eyes opened for the first time. And, especially when it comes down to actually tattooing, applying tattoos and all that stuff, it's a journey. And to have someone like that on your side that's willing to be helpful with it.
Oh man, yeah.
It's the most valuable thing in the world.
Yep. Yeah, man. It's a blessing, Yeah.
And I have to really give Guy a lot of credit because in my humble opinion, he was one of the first people that started really expanding upon the concept that, hey, it's okay to share this information. Prior to that, you never really got a whole lot of tattooers out there that were really willing to sit down and like share what they've learned. For the longest time, it was, these are my secrets. This is how I do things and I don't want anyone else to be able to do it, so that way, if anyone wants this, they have to come to me.
Of
You know?
course. Yeah.
And that's the way it was for a long, long time. And that's not the way it has to be. And I have to, like I said, I really have to thank Guy for really opening that door and showing people that, hey, it is okay to do this. Because if you're that good, people are still going to come to you. They're still going to get tattooed by you, no matter if, you know, you're sharing information or not. So what? Someone learns your tricks. Good for them. They're going to apply it in a different way.
Plus, if you teach, you know, you're learning again, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the way a lot of people that I've met in my life really learn the best, is if you throw them in a room and tell them to teach a crowd about something that they don't know about, well, now you're forced to learn it. And not only are you forced to learn it, you're forced to become an expert in it.
Yeah.
Like instantly. You have to have that confidence. You really need to know what you're talking about if you're going to be teaching other people, you know?
Yeah, that's right.
So
That's right.
bravo to him. And, you know, yeah, sure, we always pick up and learn different things at different times in different ways, but you know, I like I said, I have to give him a ton of absolute credit, because if it wasn't for him, I don't think half the artists out there that are sharing knowledge right now would actually be willing to share it.
That's right, man. You can see his influence in many styles and many people, you know. Yeah.
Oh man, I was actually out at the Explorer Tattoo Conference not too long ago in Philadelphia. Right. And I mean, we're talking about artists like Kyle Cotterman, you know, who does colorful portraits. We're talking artists like Russ Abbott and Mike Chambers, Teresa Sharp, Bill Canales, BJ Betts was there. Like, these are big names in our industry. And I can't tell you how many times during that conference I heard Reinventing the Tattoo get mentioned. I can't.
Yeah.
Because it was because of Guy, and it was because of what he started, that, you know, a lot of these people that are out there that are really doing what they're doing to the extent that they're doing it, this is why they're doing it. It all started with Guy, and it all started with Reinventing the Tattoo.
That's awesome, man. Yeah.
That reach is it's, you know, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
You know, to sit back and say, yes, I've had an influence on all of these different incredible artists. That's something not a whole lot of people can actually say.
That's right, man. Yeah.
I mean, I know I can't say it, but then again, you know, I'm trying to get my name out there, and we'll see what happens, but I'm not going to have the kind of impact that Guy has, for sure.
Or maybe you will, man.
Maybe I will. Who knows, man? Who knows?
Yeah.
I think I've got a bit further to go, but ooh, Kyle's here. Let me let Kyle in. Hey, Kyle.
Hey, what's up, Jason?
What's going on, bud?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing pretty well, man. Enjoy. It's a beautiful day out today.
What's up, Gerardo? How are you?
Doing good, man. Thanks. How are you doing?
Not too bad. Not too bad.
That's good, man. Enjoying my time here with Jason, and, playing around with that tree. This tree.
It's cool. Good base. Are you gonna add anything else to it, or it's just a tree?
It's supposedly we have to do just the model of the tree, and then find the reference for a raven and a moon.
Oh, cool.
And do the whole scene of it.
Nice. That'll be cool to see.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. Let's see what happens here. Mhm. What are you working on?
Try and pull it up here. I've got a little skull project, trying to work on some depth with this one.
Oh, nice, dude.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right on. Like the
So-
direction that's heading, man.
Thank you. Yeah. Just trying to, right now I'm working on the skull mostly, just trying to get that in and then boost the contrast a bit and really push some depth in there.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. It's all about that contrast and that depth. Can you create that illusion of depth?
Yeah. It's been clicking a lot more for me recently as well too. It's just like after going through a lot of these exercises, it's like, okay, it's all starting to kind of make sense now of how to piece the puzzle together.
Nice, man.
Yeah, it's like we all know what the pieces are in some aspect, but sometimes it just takes someone to show us what those pieces are and how they fit together with other pieces.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always like to try to challenge myself and, get outside of my comfort zone every now and then and work a bit more analog. So I've been trying to work, on different analog paintings a lot more and just sketching a lot more analog. And I miss it, man. I miss sketching on tracing paper, using half of a book of tracing paper just to like get one design completed. I miss the whole process. I don't miss the mess that it creates, and I don't miss all of the waste of art supplies that I go through. But I do enjoy that feel of like actually creating something by hand. I think
Yeah.
that's what I miss the most.
I work analog all the way, man. Well, just because I don't have a tablet or whatever,
Right?
an iPad. And I love it, man. I love the feel of paper. I love the feel of the pencil. Uh, I can see the advantages of working digital, of course, and I will certainly in some time change also. But I love, my analog, man. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
definitely a much different feeling.
It is. And, so when I was coming up and I was, getting my feet wet in the tattoo world and I was just getting started, we didn't have iPads. So like you didn't have a choice. You had to draw by hand.
Yeah.
Right? There were a select few people that were in the upper echelon that were using Wacom tablets. And, but you didn't really see a whole lot of that in the tattoo world at that time. That was really thought of as like, oh, well, that guy's just like super bougie or whatever.
Yeah.
Because I mean, they were crazy expensive. And like, what can you do on that you can't do with a couple of pieces of tracing paper, right? Oh, you can create new layers in Photoshop. That's cool. Guess what? I can flip through this book, and this book of tracing paper has 50 pages in it. That's 50 layers I can do.
Yeah.
And if I don't like a layer, I tear it out and I throw it away. Boom, done. Right. So
Yeah.
like that was the mindset at the time. And so you didn't have a choice. If you wanted to change a proportion on something, or if you wanted to change the scale of something, say it was a skull, but you didn't need a skull to fill the whole page. You needed that skull to be like 2 inches tall in the bottom right corner of this piece you were working on. Well, you drew the skull and then you took it over to the photocopier and you shrunk it down to an approximate size. Yeah, that'll do. And then you put that over and then you redrew that skull on that other little area.
Yeah.
So it was like a whole process just to get things like sized right and placed right. So it was an adventure, man. It was very process oriented. And that's something that, I do kind of miss that. I can't say I really miss the efficiency behind it because it was one of the least efficient methods to do anything. And ask anyone, man, it's like, okay, do I want to spend X amount of time drawing this and then shrinking it down and then redrawing it again or tracing out the lines again? Oh, well, maybe it needs to be just a tiny bit bigger. Okay, well, now I have to go back through, photocopy that again, redraw the lines for that again. But when you had that process down, you knew the steps to take, and I'm a very process oriented person. I love process. I love sitting down and saying, okay, this needs to be done. We need to do this step, this step, this step, this step, and this step, and then we get to this spot, breaking it down into almost a science. That's something that I really, really enjoy. But it's a lot of that is starting to get lost in this digital age. Not completely lost, but it's starting to fall back. And that's fine. I mean, that's the evolution of everything. And I respect that. And I'm not knocking it. But I think it's kind of sad in a way because you have a lot of people that are coming into tattooing now that will never have that knowledge. They'll never have that experience of knowing what it was like to have to redraw something 14 times just to get it to be the right angle or the right proportion or the right size. Nowadays, you can do it in 30 seconds on a tablet or on a computer.
Plus, I feel that, doing the whole thing, going to the art shop to get your materials or going to the Photoshop or to the photocopy or whatever, all that gives like extra energy to the final design, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Something agree. Unique. Yeah.
And I'm not, you guys know me, I work digitally all the time. And I love it. I won't ever stop working digitally. And that's a guarantee just because of the efficiency. So I do enjoy it, but there's something about working in analog that just, I don't know, man, it's just got a different type of feeling to it.
Yeah. It's that energy you give and the design gets it, and at the end, the tattoo gets it,
Right. I agree. I think that, it's something that, I look at a lot of my friends and a lot of tattooers that I know. My friend Dennis doesn't own an iPad. He draws everything by hand. And that I respect that unbelievably. He'll come in with like a huge, like 20 by 40 piece of watercolor paper of like all hand painted original designs. And looking at the craftsmanship that he put into every single brush stroke, every single area of color, every gradient, how much time he spent just getting the whole thing together and figuring out what he wanted to put where, you couldn't have created that digitally. And then printed that out at that size unless you had, thousands and thousands of dollars worth of equipment. And he just does it by hand. He's like, okay, well, I need to draw the outline of a horse. Cool. Let me see that horse picture over there. All right, cool. Yeah, I got that. Hold on. Let me sketch it up for you. And he'll sit down with some non-photo blue pencils or graphite pencils or red pencils, and he'll sketch it on paper, show someone, and they're like, oh my God, that's great.
Yeah.
But it's all analog. And I have like the utmost respect for him as an artist because I've seen this guy crank out painting after painting after painting. And they're technically immaculate, absolutely flawless. Every line is perfect. There's no stray lines. There's no line width, inconsistencies. If it's a varied line, it's a varied line. And if it's a straight line, it's a straight line. And it's that hand control and understanding that muscle memory that I think directly translates into the world of tattooing. Because when you can train your muscles to move in a certain way with a certain amount of pressure or in a certain direction, you're going to notice that translate directly into those same movements when you're tattooing.
Yeah.
And I think that I've seen that direct correlation with his work, and it's impressive to say the least.
Awesome, man. Yeah.
That's why I give people like Teresa Sharp a ton of fucking credit, because you look at Teresa Sharp, I don't think she uses an iPad at all for like tattooing or design or layout. I know she still has a tendency to draw a lot of stuff by hand. She's like, oh, you need a raven? Cool. I'm going to sit down and I'm just going to draw you a raven. I'm not going to look at any reference. I'm not going to look at any pictures. I might after the fact just to make sure that I drew it correctly. But she'll sit down with some pencils and just sketch a raven, because she spent the time breaking down the shapes, figuring out the wing structure, figuring out what the beak structure and the underlying raven skull looks like. Like, she has invested the time into understanding the subject matter to such a degree that she knows it like the back of her own hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one thing digital can't replace.
True. And it's like, I know artists up in Canada that, they needed to get better at anatomy. They would go out and buy like 4 or 5 sketchbooks, and they would fill each one with like a certain thing, like head sketches, right? Face sketches. And that's all they would do. And they would fill up an entire sketchbook with just rough sketches of understanding angles, understanding perspectives, understanding planes of the face, understanding value. Some pages might just be noses. Some pages might just be ears. Some pages might just be lips or eyes. And they'll fill an entire sketchbook with that. And then they're like, okay, cool. I've got the head and I've got the face down pretty pat. Time for me to move on to hands, right? And they'll fill an entire sketchbook with nothing but hand sketches. Hands, sometimes it's just fingers. Sometimes it's fists, angles of the fist, clutching hands or extending fingers or whatever. And, it's like, okay, they will draw 12,000 images. These are not very big drawings. These are small, like 2 to 3 inch drawings. So you can get a couple of them on each page. And they will just sit down and they will just work on one thing until it's absolutely perfect. But by the time they get done filling that sketchbook, they no longer have to worry about, is this face in the right proportions?
Yeah.
Is this eye drawn correctly? Is it rendered correctly? Is this hand at the right perspective? Because they've drawn 12,000 hands and they can do it in their sleep.
Yeah.
Nowadays it's like, oh, I need to draw a hand. Let me go to my app handy and I'll pose it in exactly the right way. And then I'll do a screenshot of that, bring that into Procreate and trace the hand.
Yeah.
And that's cool. Like I said, I use that app.
It works, yeah.
It works. But there's something about developing that personalized style to the tattoos that you do, and how drawing something 12,000 times will help you develop your own style of drawing those things.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You can be a Xerox machine. That's fine. There's plenty of people out there that are that way. And I don't knock it. That takes a very specific set of skills in order to do, in order to replicate something flawlessly from a photograph. That is an extremely talented quality. But to have someone that can sit down and create something out of thin air and then render it in photographic detail that didn't exist before, to me, takes an even bigger set of skills.
Yeah, it's something else, man. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like, with that, if it's not 100% correct, and even the smallest thing is off about it, everyone can tell.
Exactly. So as much as I respect people that do work off of photographs and that do, are photorealism artists and hyperrealism artists, and like I said, I respect that very heavily, because that is definitely a skill set that I'm not saying I don't have it. I just don't utilize it, and I'm very out of practice with it. But to me, I've always placed more value on being able to create something that didn't exist before. We got a comment in the YouTube chat from Mark Steele. He says, "Hello, comrades. I'm late. Excuse my tardiness. You will be excused this time. The next time we will take away one. You will get one demerit. So you will be punished the next time. I'm sorry, but lateness is not a good thing. Although, as one of my ex-girlfriends once said, better late than pregnant." So. Yeah, I'm actually really excited for the Deadly Tattoo Convention coming up in June.
Where is that?
Calgary, Canada.
Oh, really? You're going over there?
Yep, flying all the way up there to Calgary. Not only am I excited to go there because they have an all-star tattoo lineup of like some of the biggest inspirations to me, but I'm also getting tattooed at that convention.
Nice. By whom, man?
I'm getting tattooed by Chris Dunn. And if you look back on the YouTube channel, the Reinventing the Tattoo YouTube channel, you'll actually see an interview I did with Chris Dunn back in October, November. Forget when exactly. It was one of the two. Chris Dunn works at Deadly Tattoos with James Tex, Anthony Tex, and a couple of other people. And I've always loved his work. And I decided that the time had come for me to, finally, make the trip and get tattooed. Yeah. And when he told me that he was going to be working at the Deadly Tattoo Convention in June, I was like, oh, well, maybe if you have some time, like maybe I can get something done. So, me being me and deciding that, I might as well just go with a whole panel and just, these guys are quick. I know they can do it. I'll get a tattoo. So he's going to be tattooing the left side of my stomach down onto the top of my thigh.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's not exactly a small tattoo.
Mm-hmm. What are you getting, man?
I'm going to get a kappa. It's like a Japanese turtle kind of water demon.
Yeah. Awesome, man.
Yeah, I'm really excited. He sent me a sneak preview. He's like, just giving you an idea of what I'm thinking about. And I'm like, yes. I'm like, you don't even have to do what I suggested. You could literally tattoo anything on me and I would be okay with it. If you wanted to do a huge smiley face, I would be fine with that.
Yeah. That's going to be good, man. Really awesome, man.
Yeah, I'm planning on doing a whole lot of like interviews while I'm up there. I'm trying to get James Tex to let me interview him, because James Tex has been a massive influence on my career, on what I do, how I do it, and illustrative tattooers around the world, as well as Steve Moore. I'd love to sit down with Steve Moore and interview him because he'll be there. And these are guys that have pioneered styles. You know,
Mhm.
these are huge influences to a number of tattooers that I know personally. So for me to be able to go to this show and have all of them be accessible is going to be absolutely incredible.
Yeah,
You
man.
know,
You're gonna get so much information, so much energy that's gonna transfer on your work later, man.
absolutely. It's like, you know, back when the London Tattoo Convention was a thing, just making the trip out there just to go and see some of the artists that were working at the London show was a life and career altering event.
Yeah.
It was absolutely insanely incredible. So, you know, I highly recommend anyone out there that's really, really trying to step their game up, invest in it. Take the time, go to these shows, bring your own folding stool if you need to, which I'm actually considering doing when I go to Canada. Just so that I can like pop down and like watch people tattoo for a half hour, 45
Yeah.
minutes. You know, to me, there's nothing better than having someone just sit down and watch you and just say, oh,
Yeah.
I see what you did there. I see. You know, and then gaining that knowledge, you know, watching these master artists work. To me, there's just nothing like it. You know, let alone getting tattooed by someone there is going to be an absolutely awesome time. My friend Phibbs is going to be there as well. So I'm going to try to get him to sit down and talk to me and interview him about some things. It's just going to be an incredible lineup. I cannot wait. I think Christina Christie's going to be there as well. So I've been trying to get together with her to interview her and put that interview online. I don't know. It's going to be an awesome time.
Yeah. You say that's in June?
It is. It is. It's the beginning of June. I believe it's June 3rd, 4th, and 5th, if
Okay.
I'm correct. Yeah, but Deadly Tattoo Supply, Deadly Tattoos Incorporated. Let's see.
So this kappa you're getting is just the head or the whole thing, you know, the whole body and
So he sent me a rough sketch of the head, and we'll see where he takes it.
yeah. Okay.
I know that no matter what he comes up with, it's going to be absolutely amazing. So,
Sure.
and that's part of what I've started doing more often. And I've been doing it for a while now, is instead of going to someone with a specific idea of subject matter in mind, I'll take my time and I'll research an artist and I'll look at their whole body of work. And I'll say, okay, I know that no matter what this person draws, it or tattoos or paints or whatever, it's going to be done in a style and with the type of rendering and look that I want it to have. And I know because they've done this kind of subject matter for everything, right? Or they've done this kind of rendering for everything that they draw, regardless of subject matter. Great. Well, now I know that no matter what I ask them for, it's going to turn out amazing.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm looking at the style of work that they do as opposed to the subject matter of that work.
Yeah. Yeah. Gotcha.
You know, and it's something that I think a lot of average tattoo clients don't really look at. All they look at is, oh, well, that's a really cool fish. You know, so I know that if I want to go to that guy, I'm going to want to get a fish tattoo, you know, because they saw someone that did a really cool fish. It's like, but that person might be able to do a bird in the same kind of way. You know, they might be able to do flowers in the same kind of way, or, you know, dragons or whatever you ask them for, you know,
Yeah.
because that's their style. So why not go to them for, you know, whatever it is you're looking for?
Yep. That's right.
Yeah, more about the stylistic approach than it is the subject matter itself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like going to Picasso and asking Picasso for a Da Vinci painting. You know, you wouldn't want to do that. You go to Picasso because you want a Picasso. You know, you go to Dali because you want a Dali.
That's right.
You don't go to someone that does Cubist art and ask them for, you know, Michelangelo's
Surrealism.
Last Judgment. That's just not what you do. I mean, you could, but you'd probably get laughed at.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at least I would laugh. Then again, there's something to be said for artists that are classically trained that decide to move their work in a different style, right? And there have been a lot of tattooers that I've met in the past few years that have done just that. They might start off working with, you know, portraiture, fine line realism, hyperrealism, or, you know, microrealism. And then they'll take it and they'll take a step back and they'll start really looking at, okay, what is the essence behind this subject matter? You know, what can I take away from this, but still have it be this? Or what can I change about this, but still have it be what it is? You know, perfect example. Take a horse, for example, just as like a random subject matter concept. If you look at a horse, you might have someone that can sit down and say, yeah, we can do a realistic horse, but what if we boiled it down? What if we were able to cut out a lot of that, like super crazy, like hairlines? What if we simplified that? What if we got down to the basic essence of what this horse is and what makes it a horse?
Yeah.
You know, and then you get people that start out doing realism and now maybe they move into more traditional work, or they move into more abstract work, or more stylized kind of work. You know, they have that kind of classical background, but they had found that by getting down to the essence of different things and getting back to what really makes a horse, of course, you know, they can go through and they can still portray what a horse is without overcomplicating things. I don't know, maybe I'm just rambling, which I very well could be, by the way. How's that coming, Kyle?
Not too bad. Got probably most of the skull there.
Right.
I don't know. It feels maybe a little flat in my eyes. Let me bring it up and show you.
Yeah, let's take a look.
Maybe like some of the contrast in like you know, the eye area maybe isn't as bright.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
I would work on some lighter tones, some more subtleties, a lot more mid-tone, right where that cheekbone and jaw meet.
Right.
Try to make the contrast by where the lower mandible joins that cheekbone. Give that a bit more contrast there. Maybe not all the way dark, but maybe like 70%, just the hint of that shadow. But try to bring in some more of those like mid-tones into the middle of that skull as far as your fine detail goes. And I think that's really going to help tone the whole thing down a bit so that your highlights, that pure white that you have, isn't quite so dominating. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does.
Because you have a lot of very bright white area on the top and on the bottom part of the jaw. So by adding some more of that mid-tone and keeping your bright white highlights to a very concentrated area, I think that's really going to help separate out some values and really help create those more specific forms.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I think the biggest thing is it's like when I'm trying to do the high contrast, I try to avoid that mid range to leave it for the background, but then I feel like I leave out too much of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the challenge of doing high contrast stuff, is because you might leave out too much information.
Right.
It's doing it enough times to understand where that perfect middle ground is. And it's tricky, man. High contrast stuff is real tricky.
Yeah, it doesn't sound very hard because it's just, black on white, but it's tricky.
It's some of the most challenging stuff out there. Because if you leave out too much information, it's not going to look right. But if you include too much information, it's not going to have the right amount of contrast to it.
Right.
So the question is, where do you draw that line? Or leave that line out? Ooh.
Well, there you go.
Hoping I don't overdo the line work on this. I have a very big tendency to do.
Looking really nice, man. How do you get those subtle grays? That
A lot of layering with like a single half a drop of black ink in like a very, very large cap. So like I'll use, I think it's like a number 20 something cap. They're like small Dixie cups, not quite the size of Dixie cups, or like a number 33 like ink cap or something like that.
sure.
They're meant for like 45 mags, because a 45 mag won't fit in, your standard large ink cap. So I go through and I'll do like a drop in one of those and then fill the rest of it up with water. And it creates these very, very, very subtle light grays that are just off white enough that you can tell it's a tone, without being so dark as to say, oh, that's a light gray, right? So
Yeah.
I usually do like one drop in a massive cap, and then I just go over it time after time after time after time
With the same
until
one?
it's that perfect gradient.
Oh, nice. I'll try that, man.
Yeah. And each layer only comes out so far. So like if I don't want to risk getting any pure black on this, but so if I do the first layer, I'll bring it all the way out to the tip, right?
Yeah.
And then with the second layer, I'll bring that back like a 1/4 inch using the same wash. And then the third layer, I'll bring that back another 1/4 inch, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm blending it out with water each time. So I'll start out with one drop of that black wash that I created. Here, I'll use water on the whole thing. In fact, I did want to bump the contrast up on these a little bit more. So maybe I'll go through and do that real quick. Let me just grab a bigger brush or two. Yeah, whenever I'm doing large gradients like this, I take a very old school traditional kind of methodology to it.
Okay.
And I take a lot from the old school, like flash painters that used to paint tattoo flash, and the methods that they used to use whenever they would, come on up. There we go. Whenever they would paint tattoo flash. But I take it a little bit further, if you will. Give me one of these droppers. So I've got I've got some matte carbon black here from Dr. P.H. Martin's. This is what I usually use for a lot of these lighter tones. Give that a little shake. And then I'm literally only doing, here's my, I don't know if it's got a number on it, but it's like a massive, like number 40 something ink cap. And I'm just going to do like one drop or like a half a drop, just get a little bit of that black coming out and just touch it right down to the bottom of the ink cap so that there's just a half a drop there.
Okay.
And then I'm going to take this and then literally fill this up the rest of the way with water. And because I'm using such a large ink cap, I know that that black pigment that's in there is going to be so diluted. I'm not even going to have an option of whether or not I want it to be super, super light. As it dries, it's going to automatically lighten up to that point that I want it to be. Because as you put watercolor down, it's going to start out at a much darker value, but as it dries, that's when you start to see it lighten up. So I'm going to start out with, I've got a bigger brush here. It's like an 8 round from Dynamic Distraction. I love these brushes for watercolor, by the way. My friend Ian, who paints a lot of old school traditional tattoo flash, turned me on to these, and they are incredible. So what I'm going to start out doing is, this is already damp with water. So I'm going to go through and use the tip of this to really control where I'm wetting the paper first, bringing this all the way down. Just making the area that I want that paint to go to already wet. What that's going to do is that's going to help control where my paint flows. And I'm painting this at a 45-degree angle or like a 30-degree angle or something like that. So it's going to use gravity to help pull all of that ink down. Now I'm going to take this brush, might have a little bit of water on it, but it's pretty much dry. Going right into my wash, dab off any kind of excess. And then I'm starting out here where I want it to be darkest. And you're barely going to see anything because it's so diluted. I'm going to bring that all the way down. Now, another way that you can do this if you really want a lot of higher contrast is maybe start out in your ink wash. Take just the tip and dip it into your solid black. Dip back into your ink wash. I don't think I hit that black hard enough. There we go. And now you've got solid black, but since this is already damp, you'll see it really diffuse out. And this is another technique that I've used before. But it all starts with wetting your paper first. If you don't wet your paper first and control the area that you want that pigment to go, then it's never, ever going to look and give you that very smooth gradient kind of look. If I do that here, same process, pure water. Blocking in the area that I want that pigment to flow into. And then from here, I'm going to do my wash, black, wash. That was probably a little bit too much black, but that's okay because I'm going to take my water brush and just bring that and tease that all the way down. By pre-wetting that area, it binds that ink wash that I just put down, and forces it to stay within the areas that are already damp.
All right.
So that I know that as this ink wash that I just put down here flows, because it's going to be using gravity to draw it all the way down this way, I know that even if I only sweep it out to like this midpoint, that gravity is going to do the rest of the work for me and really help it disperse and diffuse in that downward direction. If I was going to do the same thing up here, I would actually take the whole thing, flip it upside down, just like this. And now I'm set up to do these 3 areas because I want to use gravity to help draw that paint down. For example, if I'm here, wet this area, ink wash, black, ink wash, right along there where I want the darkest value to be in this. And now I'm just going to take my water brush and just sweep it down. And that's going to give me a very subtle gradient all the way down to the tip. But if I didn't wet that area first, it would give me a very jagged fade. And that's not what I want. I want a very nice, subtle, solid, smooth gradient going all the way, starting from the center, going all the way out to the tip.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah. You think that would work working with tattoo inks the same way?
I don't doubt it. I've actually used this method with tattoo ink, but tattoo ink is a bit more, it's a bit thicker. It's got a little bit more viscosity to it. So you're probably going to have to work a little bit harder and maybe dilute it a little bit more before you lay that pigment down. Unless you're using something like, you know, a very, very thin consistency pigment, then it would work pretty much the same way. But this black that I'm using for this gray wash is very, very thin. That's what allows it to really travel as far as it does.
Yeah, okay. Awesome, man. Thank you very much. Yeah. Because I've been playing around with black ink, and I couldn't get that soft gray, you know. Maybe my washes were too strong, and I didn't wet the paper either. Yeah.
It also has to do with the type of black ink you're using. And I found that out the hard way. Not all black drawing inks are created equally. Some are very, very rough when it comes down to the blends and gradients and how they dry and what tones they create as they dry. I found that a couple like Dr. P.H. Martin's does create a black ink that dries with almost a silvery gray tone. And that's what I like. Also, Liquitex makes a acrylic ink. The Liquitex black acrylic ink does dry with also a very silvery gray tone that you can really get some nice gradients with. Black inks like Talon's drawing ink does not blend out very well. It won't allow you to get that kind of a smooth gradient.
Okay.
Pelican, you can get that kind of a smooth gradient with, but it takes a little bit more work. There are a few others too that I've used. Golden black doesn't smooth out very well. You know, there are a couple out there, but sometimes Higgins is not very conducive to making smooth gradients. I don't recommend Higgins, but that's just me. A lot of tattoo ink out there was once formulated off of drawing ink. So I would be surprised if you can't use certain black tattoo inks. Once again, unless you're using Talons, which does not work very well.
I'm using this,
Okay.
which is like
Yeah.
a Japanese. Mhm.
Sumi ink.
Yeah.
That should work pretty well. And it should dilute pretty well. I would do a test batch first and just get like the barest hint of black onto a piece of plastic, like a plastic bag, piece of saran wrap or something like that, and then add a little bit of water to it, and then take that and apply it to, a small little test piece of paper, just to see how well it thins out and what ratio you need to use. Because
Okay.
some of those Sumi inks are very thick, and those very, very thick Sumi inks do not blend out very well.
Nice. Okay.
They might be great for doing outlines, though. So that's just my 2 cents on it.
Thank you very much, man. That helps a lot. Yeah.
I won't ever forget. I went to the Asbury Park, New Jersey tattoo convention one year to just walk around and attend it. And Troy Temple, the guy that runs the Philadelphia show, the Chicago show, the Baltimore show, and like a whole bunch of other ones, he was there and he was painting a whole door for like a work of art. And he was doing it all with ink wash.
Wow.
And he had 2 of the biggest round brushes I think I've ever seen in my life. And he was using those to paint this door, and he was using tattooing to paint it.
Wow, man. Yeah.
And I remember stopping and asking him about what he was using. And he's like, yeah, man, I usually use Pelican, but like I forgot mine at home. So I'm just using Sumi ink. He's like, but you got to be careful if you're using Sumi because it dries quick. And he's like, watch, and he did like a little bit of black, and then he would go through with his other brush. And the way he was holding his brushes was crazy to me. So he was actually holding his brushes like this, right?
Yeah.
So he would go through and he would use this brush, the smaller of the 2, and he'd put black down, like a big stripe of black, and then he would turn his hand, and in the same motion, using his hand, just turning his hand, pivoting it a little bit, he would wash out all of that black with a water brush.
Crazy, man. Yeah.
Yeah, it was mind blowing. I had never seen anyone paint that way or that fast ever before in my life. Sorry for the dead air, everyone. Kind of ran out of a couple of things to discuss, but I'm going to soak all of this up using my convention paper towel trick.
What's your convention paper towel?
Oh, so
trick?
anytime I don't have anything like liquid solidifier or anything like that, you take a paper towel and you twist it up.
Okay.
And you use that.
Yeah.
And it basically just creates a wick to absorb everything inside the cap.
Okay. Yeah.
And then you take that and you just throw everything out. And fortunately, I've got 2 other paper towels here. So already set and ready to go. But I am probably going to cut today's session a tiny bit short. I mean, we still got like another good 15 minutes before I got to go. But I do have quite the laundry list of things I have to do today.
Me too, man.
Yeah, you know how it goes, man. Just because we got this stuff going on doesn't mean life stops. And unfortunately, sometimes things have to get done.
Yeah. We
Life
wish
can't all
we
be
could
fun
do
and
this.
games.
Yeah. We wish we could do this all day, right?
Oh, dude, tell me about it, man. If I could literally spend all day, every day, just painting, drawing, and tattooing, without a doubt in my mind, I would do that in a heartbeat. Unfortunately, I am not independently wealthy, so I do still have quite a few things that need to be taken care of.
But someday, man, someday.
Yeah, someday would be nice, man. I'd be that old tattooer living on a beach hut,
Yeah.
just like doing my thing, being like, you want a tattoo? Sit down.
That's gonna be the way, man. That's gonna be the way, man.
Let me tell you a story about back in the early 2000s. They just came out with these things called iPads. Because as technology progresses, it's going to change a lot of things. Skynet's going to come about and the Terminators will be there.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah Connor's going to come out of left field with a grenade launcher. You know how it goes. Something a tiny bit thinner than this. 3 that's a 0. All right, see what I got.
All right, so I got a question for you.
I have an answer for you.
What are some of... Oh, okay, great. Well, I guess I don't need to ask it then. What are some of your go-to questions when, like, when you're walking around a convention and just trying to learn from people? Because I'm not too versed in art talk per se, as much as everyone else would be. So what are some of the questions that you would go for?
So my favorite question to ask other artists, and it doesn't matter if I'm walking around at like an art show or, a tattoo convention, or I'm watching people paint flash or anything. Doesn't matter if I'm at a studio, just doing like a studio visit. One of my favorite all-time questions to ask is, what do you put your primary emphasis on? If you had to pick one thing that you would say you put your most energy into when it comes down to creating a design or creating a tattoo or executing a tattoo or creating a work of art, if you had to pick out one thing that you really put a lot of effort and energy into, what would it be? Because you'll notice some people focus more on things like line work, very heavy line, a lot of different gray lines, a lot of different black lines, line width, line weight, negative lines, areas that have no line, areas that have, all different types of lines. Then there are other people that focus a lot more on texture. There are people that focus a lot more on contrast. There are people that focus more on color and using colors to convey different things. You'll see people that focus more on placement and flow, and they'll maybe they have a very simplistic color palette, but they'll put a lot more emphasis on like how it moves with the body. There's a page called Black Symmetry on Instagram. If you look at that, you're literally just looking at black designs or shades of gray, but the way that they place it on the body and the way that they factor in the movement of the body when they're creating that design takes a lot of forethought. Like, they really plan that stuff out because they need to have it so that as someone moves their shoulder blades and contracts their shoulder blades, maybe the image expands or contracts. And how do they want it to look when the person moves, right? So every artist out there has something that, whether it's conscious or not. And that's the thing. A lot of artists don't really pick that out. They don't really understand that they spend a lot more energy and time working on creating line weight variation or heavy contrast
or maybe they really want to do hyper detail in this area for focus. You know, where do they want people to look? Like Steve Butcher, for example. You know, he has a lot of emphasis on focus. What's in focus and what's out of focus. You know, you have a lot of guys like Guy, who focuses a lot on texture and the balance of texture in his pieces. You know, then you have people like Casey Gonzalez, you know, who works primarily with high contrast. You know, it's black and gray realism, but it's super high contrast. You know, then you have people like Jeff Gogwe, who works primarily with line and the use of line and different types of line, color lines and gray lines. Christina Christie does something very similar. She uses a lot of line in what she creates. But then you have guys like Steve Moore, who uses color. And you look at his stuff and you don't even see outlines. You just see color variation and the use of color to create depth and dimension and light and value, you know, where his stuff might not have the most contrast. He's using color in the most effective way. So sometimes artists aren't really conscious of that, you know, and sometimes you have to point out examples to them and say, okay, well, you know, I've noticed that you have a lot of varied line weight. Is that done on purpose? Or are you using this color palette for a specific reason? You know, are you using your in focus versus out of focus elements for a specific reason? Because I see that in your body of work, you know? So sometimes you have to point things out to them. Sometimes they don't even know. And they're just like, I don't know. That's how I do things. I have no idea. You know, but other times they're conscious of it and they say, they'll give you an explanation behind it.
Okay.
You know? So sometimes you're actually enlightening them to things that they didn't realize.
Right, right.
Sometimes they have a specific reason behind it, but you know, you never know until you ask. So that's one of my all-time favorite questions. And every interview I have ever done with any other type of an artist, I'm always asking that question. What's your primary emphasis when you're creating a design or creating a tattoo or executing that tattoo? What do you really spend the most time thinking about? Right? Because to me, that's ultimately one of the defining characteristics behind each individual artist out there, and what separates individual unique styles from one artist to another artist. You know, it also gives you the credibility because you're asking a very intelligent question. You know, you're standing there and you're pointing things out to them that they might not even have noticed. So automatically they're looking at you in a different light, like, oh shit, like this guy knows what he's talking about. And he's asking me for answers to this question that I didn't even think of, right? So it puts you on a different playing field. Other things like, as far as subject matter go, what's your favorite subject matter to work with?
In terms of subject matter, usually a lot of like the, you know, like the dark skulls, kind of horrific looking things.
Okay. So if you're looking more at dark art and things like that, one of the questions I would say is, where do you draw your inspiration from? What are some of the things that you've experienced or done that have absolutely completely changed your concept of things? Like I know for a lot of artists that love doing skulls, going to the catacombs in Paris has been like a life-altering experience because you're literally surrounded by skulls everywhere, right? That could be a source of inspiration. Going to see different types of crypts or different types of catacombs, you know, could be a very big inspiration. Going to see ossuaries in Europe that are houses filled where everything is made out of bone and skull. That could be an inspiration, you know, but what do you just try to imagine the most evil possible thing you can come up with? And if so, where does that come from? Where does that evil, what do you define as evil?
Right.
You know, So these are all questions that you can say, or light source is another good one, especially for that very high contrast dark art. How do you determine where you want your light source to be? You know, typically speaking, when you have a top down light source, it's going to give it a much more type of like a holy or an angelic kind of a feel. But you'll oftentimes see people that do a lot more creepy or dark art light stuff from underneath, right? Because it by default gives it a much more creepy kind of look. You know, so where's your favorite place to put your light source? Do you like to do underlight? Do you like to do overlight? Things of that nature. How does texture play into what you like to create? Some people really like that bone texture. Other people try to go for smoother gradients. You know, these are all great questions to ask anyone that does that kind of work.
Gotcha, yeah.
So, I mean, that's my 2 cents on it. But, you know,
Yeah.
everyone's got different things. Also, don't be afraid to be forward and ask them very specific things like, why are you using that size liner or that size round for that area? You know, why are you using a 15 mag instead of a 23 mag or 25 mag? You know, why are you using number 12 long tapers over bug pins? You know, these are all very good questions. You know, some people just like what they like. You know, I remember asking James Tex in London one year. I was like, well, you know, what kind of a mag is that? Is that a medium taper? Is it a long taper? Is it a bug pin? He's like, yeah, it's just a, you know, number 12 medium taper, 15 mag. It's got a little bit of a curve on it, but, you know, it's nothing special, you know? And it's like, okay, well, why are you using that instead of like long taper 23 mag, which could cover just as much area, maybe even a little bit faster, you know, but why are you using a 15 that's medium instead of a 23 that's long? You know, what is there a reasoning behind that? Or, you know, do you know why? Is it just what you brought with you? Like, what is there a purpose behind it? Sometimes they won't have an answer. Sometimes they will turn around and say, no, you know, usually I'd use that, but, you know, I just left my other stuff at home. It's like, oh, okay, cool. Adaptation. Gotcha.
Right.
The answer I got from James was that, you know, by using a 15 mag medium taper, he only has to cover an area once with color. He only has to do a single pass with color. And that color is saturating the entire thing. He doesn't have to go back into it because when he gets done doing that spot is done. So it allows him to work in a much more efficient manner. You know,
Right.
Whereas if you were to use a long taper, yes, it's going to cause less skin trauma, but it's not going to saturate that skin quite as well. So maybe you'll have to go back into it again. You know, and the more time you spend going back into areas, the less time you're spending tattooing new areas and progressing in your progress. People like Paul Booth, for example, have been known to use a lot of round shaders when they're tattooing. Maybe they'll outline with a mag, and I'm pretty sure it was Paul that was known for doing this. He used to be known for outlining with a mag and then shading everything in with a round shader, like an 18 round shader or something like that. And it's like, well, why? Because by using a round shader, he can go through and create all those tiny little niche textures that he really likes to incorporate. You know, and maybe he'll go back through and use a mag to create a larger gradient or something like that. But by using a medium or a large round shader, he really gets that texture in there that he's looking for. You know, so sometimes you just have to be direct with things like that.
Right.
You know, always, whenever you're approaching an artist at a convention, always ask them if you can ask them a few questions. Some people don't like to be bothered. You know, some people just like to get into that zone, and do what they do. And that's it. They don't want to deal with anything else. They don't want to be distracted. They just want to work on what they're working on. And if, you know, if they give you a response like, not really, it's like, okay, do you mind if I stop by later? Once you're done with this, would you mind if I asked you a few questions at that point? Most artists will be like, yeah, that's fine. You know, and they'll give you an explanation like, you know, I'm just trying to focus to get this done right now. Other artists are totally cool and they'll be like, yeah, man, pull up a chair. Come on, sit down. We'll have a chat. You know, those are the guys that you can ask them questions as they're working, and you don't have to sit there and observe, write your questions down, and then go back to them later with the questions. You know, those guys that'll invite you to pull up a chair right then and there, those are the best people to talk to. They will divulge everything that they are doing at that point in time without a hesitation, and they love it. They love that kind of stuff. Other people like to be in their own world, you know, but always be polite and respectful about it. You know, never enter another artist's booth without asking them if that's okay. That's a big thing that I've actually had to yell at people before. You know, at the Philly show this past year, I actually had to yell at, you know, just one of the random people walking around like, yo, you're not supposed to be back here. What are you doing? You know, because they were like right over my shoulder and I was trying to work on this tattoo and they were eating something as they were standing over my shoulder. And it's like, number one, you're supposed to have your mask on. So why is it not on? Number two, why are you eating in my booth over my shoulder as I'm trying to tattoo? Like, what are you doing here?
Right.
I did not invite you back. I don't know who you are. I don't trust you. And you're eating over a fresh tattoo? I think not.
Yeah.
You know, so always ask for permission. It shows a sign of respect that you respect their space, being an artist, you respect what they're doing, and you're smart enough to not just like jump right into that booth and be like, oh, that's really cool, man. Can I ask you some questions? Always ask from the opposite side of the booth. You know what I'm saying? Like it just goes for being polite and showing respect. I mean, you know, things are usually a little bit different if you're at an art show, like a gallery showing, because you're walking around and no one's actually like working at that time. But, you know, there's different things that you can take into consideration for everything. You know, speed of the machine. Why are you running it so fast or so slow? Is there a reason behind that? You know, are you taking the area of the body that you're tattooing into consideration? Like, how does that affect the technique that you're using when you're applying that tattoo? You know, you might see guys that are working a lot more off the tip of the cartridge or the tip of the tube, running at a very slow or moderate speed when tattooing something like an armpit or the back of someone's knee, just because they know it's very thin, very fragile skin, and they don't want to cause too much damage. You might see them hang out a little bit more needle or work more off the tips of the needles if they're working somewhere like the outer portion of an arm or a leg or something like that. So how does the area of the body that they're currently working on impact the type of technique that they're using, or even the types of needles that they're using? Some people, especially for much more thin, delicate areas, will prefer to opt for something that's a smaller diameter pin, like a number 10 or a number 8 pin, as opposed to a number 12 pin, just because of the amount of trauma that it's going to cause that area of the skin. You know, for some people, they're like, yeah, whatever, I just use the same thing on everything. You know, it doesn't really matter. I might run it a little bit slower, or maybe I won't press as hard, but you know, I still use the same thing for everything. And that's cool. Those people are awesome to watch, because they are literally adapting to whatever area of the body by adapting themselves, not their machines, not their equipment or anything like that, but they are adapting themselves to that type of tattoo in that area. You know,
Yeah.
what was the biggest challenge that you've overcome? Or what was the thing that you thought really changed your technique the most? You know, if there was like a piece of equipment or a new piece of information that they gathered from a different artist that completely changed the way that they thought of things. You know, things like that are great talking points because it brings up discussion. And it's like, okay, well, where did you come across that piece of information? How did that information change you? And, you know, what advice could you give to other people that are considering that? These are all like pretty in-depth, pretty difficult questions for a lot of people to answer, but I find you get the most discussion-oriented topics and answers out of them. But always leave your questions open-ended. Let them elaborate.
Right.
You know, that's how you're going to get the most information, is by leaving the question open-ended or asking them to, you know, expand off of that or ask follow-up questions with it, because then you never know. They could be like me and they could get into a tangent like I am now, right? You asked me a very simple question.
Yeah.
And I've been talking almost nonstop for 20 minutes now. So.
But, you know, I like to avoid, you know, the really simple or basic questions because, you know, everyone asks that and like to at least get a little bit deeper than the basic.
Yeah. And the deeper the question that you ask and the more that they have to think about that question, the better the knowledge that you're going to get out of that question is going to be.
Right.
You know, always ask intelligent questions. Always. You know, that has been something that I've learned many, many times over, is think about what you're going to ask and think about if anyone has ever asked them that question before.
Right. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a big one that runs through my head every time.
It's like, they've probably answered this question 1,000 times. Maybe I don't want to answer that, or maybe I don't want to ask that specific question. That's why I like to think about like, okay, well, let's examine their whole body of work. Oh, this person likes to do a lot of Art Nouveau stuff. Okay. So obviously they've got a very big influence with Alphonse Mucha. What other artists outside of Mucha would you look at for inspiration? You know, or I love the way that you've drawn these scroll designs or the filigree. Where did you get your inspiration for that? Or is there a specific thing that you like to look at for inspiration when drawing things like filigree or scroll work designs? Where do you draw up your inspiration for your dot work, right? Does that come from a specific area, or are you just saying, you know what, screw it, I'm just going to throw a dotted design in this area? You know, there's got to be a reasoning behind it, whether they realize it or not.
Right.
So, and like I said, you never know. You may ask a few questions to some people that don't know how to answer said question because they've never even thought of it. You know, and that's how you know you've got a winner. Because when you can turn around and say, gotcha, stumped you, didn't I? It's like it takes them a minute, but you're going to get some quality information out of it.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, be respectful. Always identify yourself as an artist, you know, and that's one thing that I have always found as a very key thing to do, especially at conventions, especially open conventions or public conventions where anyone can get a booth. Like, always go through and identify yourself as an artist working with so-and-so at whatever studio. It gives you credibility and validation and immediately tells them that you're not just some scratcher trying to fish for information.
Right.
You know, if it's someone that you really, really admire their work, tell them. Be like, listen, I've been following your work for 20, 30 years now, you know, or however long you've been looking at their work for inspiration. Or, say, hey, listen, I picked up a friend of mine's tattoo magazine from way back when, and I saw an article you were in. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions? I did that with my friend Denny Besner. He was interviewed while he was working at a studio called Avalon 2 out in San Diego. And now he owns his own studio, but it's like, dude, I didn't even realize you were in a magazine, and there he is. And it's a full-on interview with him. It's pretty cool. But always identify yourself as an artist. That way, the questions that you're going to be asking aren't coming out of left field and are going to be coming with the amount of proper, not authority, but it's going to give you a little bit more validity to the questions that you're asking, especially being a part of this community. Let it be known you're a part of the community. You might as well tell people that you are.
Right.
If you're interviewing them for a specific reason or asking them questions for a specific reason, tell them. Be very straightforward about it. Be like, listen, I'm asking you these questions because it's something that my coworker and I have always been debating for the past few months. And I was wondering if you had any input on it. That's a great way to frame and phrase a question for a tattoo artist.
Okay, yeah.
Or if it's just a curiosity that you've always had, tell them. Be like, listen, I've always been curious about this. Where does your inspiration come from? Like, do you just, especially with dark artists, it's like, do you just close your eyes at night and see evil shit? Or like, do you actually have to seek out inspiration? Because I don't know about you, but if I just closed my eyes at night and saw evil shit, I don't think I would ever sleep. So like, do you just try to like take positive stuff and try to do the inverse of that? Like, how do you do this?
Yeah.
Did you have traumatic experiences as a child?
And you know what? Usually the answer is yes.
Were you one of Gacy's kids? It's like there's always something more there. The question is, how are you going to figure it out? What way can you approach it to get your question answered?
Right.
And it's tricky, man. And all the years I've been attending shows, I've had artists specifically turn around to me and be like, no, you can't ask me questions. Don't ask me questions because I'm not going to answer them. Oh, okay. Not a problem.
Just move on to the next one.
Exactly. Sometimes that's what you have to do. And sometimes people are like, absolutely, man, sit down, pull up a chair. I think depending on the type of response you get to that initial, do you mind if I ask you a few questions? That's going to kind of set the pace for the rest of the conversation.
Yeah. Whether if they're open to it or not.
Exactly. But anyone that's not very open to it, or, say you go through and you ask your first question and they give you a very, very short answer. Just say, okay, cool. Thank you for your time. I was just curious about that. Have a wonderful day. Move on. Because there's a pretty good chance if they just give you a very short answer, they're not really trying to engage in a conversation.
Yeah.
Find out what people's hobbies are like outside of tattoo, because that's going to tell you where they draw inspiration for a lot of things that they do in tattooing. Ask them what artwork they have hanging up at their station, at their studio, or like artwork that they have hanging up at home, because that'll give you a very big indicator into who do they draw their inspiration from and who do they look to for stuff that keeps them motivated. Like I'm sitting here and I've got a canvas print that Bruno made hanging up on my wall next to an oil painting that Guy made hanging up on my wall, hanging next to a canvas print that I picked up from James Tex in London, you know, hanging next to an original watercolor ink painting done by Chris Dunn, which is next to an ink dragon painting done by Bill Canales. You know, these are people that constantly inspire me. So yeah, I'm going to hang their artwork up and I'm going to look at that every time I'm like, man, I'm struggling drawing this dragon horn. Like, let me glance over at Bill's painting and get some inspiration. All right, I see what he did there. All right, now I'm back to it. You know, same thing with you. I'm sure you've got artwork hanging up around you. That's going to keep you motivated and keep you going forward. Yeah. You know, so these are all tiny little things. If it's someone that's more prominent in the tattoo world, ask them who the biggest influence on their career has been. For example, you'll see a huge influence of Philippe Lou's work in Paul Booth's work, right? You'll see a very big influence as far as technique, as far as application process, as far as demeanor, because Paul went over and got tattooed by Philippe Lou, you know, and that is a monumental task. That is a monumental big thing. That's no small deal, you know, and you can see the influence that he had.
Right.
So these are all questions, by the way, I plan on asking guys like Steve Moore, James Tex, you know, basically everyone that's going to be at the Deadly Tattoo Convention. These are all questions I plan on asking them.
You're going to have all those recorded, or some of them just for personal sakes?
I'm going to try to go through and record as many of them as I can. I'm going to bring a camera and a couple of wireless lav mics. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to go through and actually like stream them live, because I don't know what the Wi-Fi is going to be like there.
Right. But
if I can go through and at least record them for broadcast later, I'm going to try to do that and get their consent for that. Because I don't want to go through and do like a whole interview with someone and then have them be like, no, I don't mind if you keep this interview for like personal reasons, but like, don't be putting this kind of shit online.
Right,
like,
right.
All right, never mind then. You know, but I mean, even if it's just a personal conversation, that's cool. But I'm going to try to get consent to go through and put them up on YouTube later on.
Well, hopefully we'll see some of those coming out.
Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, Chris Dunn was pretty open to it. I hit James up about it. Hopefully I can get a few minutes to sit down with him, although he's the organizer of the show. So I don't know if he's really going to have time to sit down and talk to me about it. But hopefully he will. James, if you're listening now, I would love to sit down and interview you. Cool. Well, I am going to get going, guys. Thank you for joining me today. So I made a little bit of progress on this guy today. Did a lot of the black outlines, kind of hammered that in, started doing a lot of the interior lines on the heart and on perimeter lines on the hand. I still have a lot more lines I need to do on the inside of the heart, where all these little veins and arteries are. And then probably some other super thin, like gray lines for the separation of the fingers. But yeah, made a little bit of progress today. A little bit goes a long way. Hope you guys enjoyed tuning in today. Why don't we go through and start doing some sign-offs? Kyle, I will start with you.
Sure. My name's Kyle Bernstein, and you can find me online at Skies of Fire Tattoo on Instagram, as well as skiesofiretattoo.com.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Gerardo, why don't we go through? I'm going to do a couple of sign-offs. So go ahead and tell us how people can get a hold of you.
All right. My name is Gerardo Romero, and you can find me on Instagram, Romero Art Tattoo. And it's been great, man. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Kyle.
You're very welcome, man. And let me spotlight myself. So, hey, everyone. My name is Jason Leeser. I'm here. I lead the Skill Building Sunday Drawing Group here at Reinventing the Tattoo. Thank you for jumping in and joining us today. If you guys like the content, if you like what you heard, go through, make sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons on YouTube, or follow us on our podcasts, and we will continue to bring other information such as this to you. Thank you very much for everyone that tuned in and was watching today and listening in. And hope you guys have a wonderful day today. Kyle and Gerardo, thank you very much for joining me today so that I'm not here just talking to the camera by myself. I really appreciate that more than I think you realize. So yeah, thank you guys very much for jumping in and joining us. And I will see you guys next week.
See you, man. Take care. Thank you.
Yeah.